There's Zoe.
Brilliant.
Great. There she is.
Hi, I am here. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We've got a couple of people joining and coming in now. So yeah, I'll just say a very warm welcome to everyone who's joining us. It's great to see you here today. And welcome to Functional Drinks, What's the Future? Which is the topic we'll be discussing today. So we'll get started in just a couple minutes, but I'll give it just a few more seconds for people to join. You can see attendees coming in now, so great. And then for those of you who don't know me, my name's Auren, and I'll be hosting the webinar on behalf of WonderWorks today. With our group of amazing panelists who we'll introduce you to shortly, and also Laura, who's our fabulous co-host as well.
Cool, and I think everybody's in a different country, right? You've got Vaughan in Ireland, and Zoe's currently in Italy, and Heidi's in America. Yeah, exactly. And somebody's joined us from Cape Town, so that's cool.
That's great, yeah. And I will say as well, throughout the webinar, please do feel free to write in any questions you have or any comments in the chat. We want to make it kind of as engaging as possible. So do pop any thoughts you've got in there, and we'll do our best to answer them all throughout.
Cool. And also you've got somebody asking if the recording's available after the webinar, and it is, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, we'll be sending that around. So yeah, in case anyone misses it or you want to pass it on, we will too.
Oh, hi Ellie, hi Anne. Seeing who else is there. Hi Chris.
Yeah, do feel free to say where you're tuning in from. Hi Tim.
So many people. Hamburg and Better Roads in America. This is cool. South
Scotland.
London. No, it's not far enough, South London.
Armenia.
Yeah.
Huh?
Hey, Anne. Hey, Tim.
Cool. Hi, Christine. Julian from Ostara Vermouth, dialing in from Sussex, yeah. Hi, Adam from Manchester. Paris, lovely. France. Great. Cool. I think I think let's make a start, and I can see a couple more people, and we've got about 50 so far. So yeah, I'm sure more will join as we go, but I think yeah, let's make a start. So for those of you who've just joined, as I said, my name is Auren, and I'll be co-hosting the webinar today with Laura on behalf of WonderWorks. And for those of you who are new to us, some of you will already be familiar with us, and some of you might not, but we're a small independent creative agency based in London who specialize in all things drinks. As part of that, we host the WonderNETwork, which is a community of drinks professionals who come together each quarter to network, learn from one another, share insights and outlooks on the modern day drinks industry. And that's part of what we're doing today. As you know, this webinar is titled Functional Drinks, What's the Future? So today we'll be discussing just that, and hopefully leaving you guys with some valuable tools and insights and resources to take away. So just before I hand over, I'll just say a little bit about why we're here and what the topic means to us. So as a creative agency specializing within drinks, we've been privileged enough to meet a host of drinks brands across the kind of functional drink spectrum, each with its own unique function. So we've seen that this is really no longer a new phenomenon. The last few years have seen an explosion of new brands into the functional drink space, and the category has really emerged way beyond the initial spirit alternatives that led the change. CBD in drinks has now become mainstream. Established brands have come to market with non-alcoholic alternatives, and there's been an influx of functional beers, wines, kombuchas, and adult soft drinks. In short, the category really shows no signs of slowing down, and is expected to be one of the fastest subgroup in the global beverage market today. So today we'll look at this all in a bit more depth. exploring not only what it means to be functional, but what's required to market a brand as such, and also discuss some of the challenges and hurdles that some of the panelists have overcome with their brands or venues. We'll also look at the demand for functional drinks and its occasionability, looking at the different directions the category is going in, what consumers respond best to, and also comparing some of the trends in the US versus the UK and globally, as well as looking at what the future has in store for the category as a whole. And then lastly, we'll discuss a bit about where the responsibility lies within this category and perhaps some of the kind of guardrails to watch out for as it continues to grow. So without further ado, I'll now hand you over to the real experts. But first, let me just take a minute to introduce Laura Willoughby, who's going to be our brilliant co-host today. Laura's an experienced public sector leader who's campaigned for the public good in the community. She's a former politician, a businesswoman, and a receiver of an MBE. And importantly to today, she's the co-founder of Club Soda, which is the social impact organization which works with individuals, brands, and venues to change attitudes toward mindful drinking. So Laura, thanks very much for being here. And yeah, I'll happily pass over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. And it's a really timely discussion, I think, you know, as alcohol-free's grown, alongside it has grown functional, and there hasn't been a good discussion about functional on its own. And so I'm really pleased that we've got three really great speakers today. Zoe Henderson, founder of Function, which is a beer with adaptogenic mushrooms, which went down very well at the festival this weekend in Brighton. If it goes down anywhere, Brighton has got to be the place, right? So, yeah. So it went down very well. And it's important that we know that there are functional ingredients beyond CBD, and tea and mushrooms and other adaptogenics are also widely available. We've got Vaughan Yates, founder of the Virgin Mary Bar, and it's worth saying that the Virgin Mary Bar has now expanded to the Middle East, and they're seeing a whole different range of customers and behaviours there and attitudes towards functional ingredients. So it's a really interesting perspective to add into this. And remember that it's not all about the white Western world, the discussion about this, or about alcohol-free in general. And then we've got Heidi Dillon, who's MD of North American Distill Ventures, who's also, I mean, if again, America does functional stuff really, really well already. And so as Low and No begins to break into the States, it's really interesting to see how that migrates. So thank you all for joining us today. And I think I'd just say briefly that I think, you know, this is such a new, we're still very in early stages of functional, that and there are all types of functional ingredients, all the way from tea, all the way through to CBD. And I think there are no right or wrong answers on this. But I guess what puts functional apart from alcohol-free in general is the fact that you're talking about ingredients that would normally be regulated in a health food context or as novel ingredients, which creates some extra hurdles. There's also some extra hurdles for the consumer in terms of understanding. And I know trying to talk to people about why you might have adaptogenic mushrooms in a beer, when I hear Zoe talk about that, you know, that the education piece goes beyond alcohol-free. And so there are some unique things to talk about functional ingredients. I hope we will touch on them today. I've also seen who's been chatting in the chat box, and I realise that there's a lot of people here who know an awful lot, have got a lot of views on this. So please don't hold back on asking questions or adding in comments, and I will do my best to incorporate them as we go through, because at the end of the day, this is about us progressing the discussion, and it'd be really great to have your input into that. Or if you see something you hear that you think is great or spot on or something like that, then please interact and we will add that in. So I think we should start with the other thing to say is that I challenged Vaughan to see how many functional drinks that we could drink during this session. And he went out and got himself just a Guinness. But I've currently got some Halo and some Trip, and I'm going to be drinking these because it's so hot. I'm going to be drinking these throughout. And so we'll see if they have any effect by the end, right? I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, so let's start with the question. Let's start with you then, Vaughan. What does it mean to be functional? What classifies as a product in this category? Where does it come from? What do you see where you are?
Well, I think, you know, we really noticed these products during COVID that start to emerge. You know, when we first opened our bar, we were a non-alcohol, alcohol-free bar. And over the last couple of years, we've seen you know, more products come to the market that claim to be functional, and it's kind of getting an understanding of what they are and what they do and how they work in terms of people's bodies. And then what we also realized that there was probably, you know, very small amounts of ingredients within a lot of those products. So we, you know, looked at how much, I suppose, adaptogens, nootropics, nervines, as we kind of, those are the kind of ingredients we're looking at. And we really looked at how we could boost our cocktails with a whole range of alcohol-free products, and then bring in that side of functionality to the drinks, to the cocktails. And what we noticed, in September last year, we launched a mood boosting, we call it a mood boosting menu, because we think that's easy for consumers to understand. And there are various mood boosting options on that menu. And we split our menu between alcohol-free and mood boosting. And we just noticed there was a big interest and uptake in that side of our menu, and it started to outsell our alcohol-free cocktails.
I'm going to come back to that sales point in a minute, but does that mean that you make your own, or have? I can see you've got 3 spirits on the shelf behind you, but do you buy in any other?
Well, Three Spirit really started it off for us, and we actually just noticed that it was consumers that were buying 3 Spirit, and they were saying to us that they liked the product, they liked what it did for them. You know, we're not making claims here. We're just kind of working with what our consumers feel, you know, from the products that they drink. And they felt, you know, when they took a Livener, for example, much more animated. And we see that in the bar. And then we started to look at other products. You know, if anybody's producing functional products out there, get in touch with us, because we want to bring this into our repertoire a lot more. So you have products like Wild Eve started to emerge, Mockingbird, you've got Wildlife, you've got Joey's Beers. And then if you don't have functional ingredients, we actually introduced these tinctures here. I don't know if you can see them, but these tinctures. We have a range of about 7 to 8 tinctures on the back bar that we add into our drinks. And, you know, I really like these functional drinks. I really like what they're beginning to do for our consumers. And at the end of the day, it's our consumers that want them.
Yeah, that's cool. And you're right, there's a demand. Heidi, where do you see that demand going globally? Is that something you're seeing through Distill Ventures, or are you just like, whoa, this is something else and we're not quite sure what to do with it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think as we, you know, similar to what Vaughn said, there was a big shift that happened during COVID as people were at home, you know, the trade is really thinking about how to educate people on how to make interesting drinks at home. People are more aware of health and wellness, thinking about lots of different ways to enjoy drinks, different occasions, different ways to think about that. So certainly that momentum started to pick up speed when you started to see some of the, you know, functional elements introduced to this. One way I really like to think about it, and as we're talking to entrepreneurs, you know, as you know, when Seedlip launched, and then obviously we've had various categories and segments start to emerge within non-alc, but it was always without, right? So it's alcohol-free or non-alc, or always these words that were removing something. Whereas with functional, we've kind of gone from the without to with. And I think that's where you really see this surge from consumers is, okay, there's an adult social beverage occasion, but now I can actually have an added benefit or a with, whether it's, you know, as Vaughn said, if it's more around a mood booster or clarity or relaxation. I think those are added elements that folks are really looking for as they expand their drink repertoire. And it's not solely non-alc drinkers. You know, we'll talk about this a little later, but interesting that, you know, we see so much overlap in the way that people drink throughout the day, throughout the week. And it's just another way that I think we can get some really interesting flavors, occasions into the drinks category.
Cool. And Zoe, you know, you've picked on a very particular functional ingredient that isn't even, you know, CBD is quite well known, functional mushrooms not so. So why did you go there, and where do you think that fits into that sort of list of functional ingredients?
Yeah, I think my attention had been drawn to adaptogens and herbs and kind of using them for health and wellness for a long time. And I'd been supplementing with mushrooms for, quite a few years before I started the brand. But I was working within the no and low space, and I saw how this functional element was coming out. I saw how customers were really getting on board with CBD and understanding how, plants and herbs and botanicals can have a positive effect on our bodies. And for me, it was about looking at another way that I could get these functional mushrooms and their amazing benefits that I'd found the benefits to into a product. And I saw a space for this because in the US, there are quite a few mushroom brands already. There's coffees, there's seltzers, there's kombuchas. And looking how that was kind of fitting into this functional drinks category, I thought it was an interesting space because nobody was doing it. CBD is a bit of a minefield, as we know, and comes with lots of regulatory issues, but mushrooms are, pretty well used, and only a few of them sit as a novel food. So it was quite like a safe product to use, but with really interesting benefits, and also a flavor profile that worked really well with beer as well. So it was a combination, but I think, like Heidi was saying, seeing this, there's an exciting shift happening where consumers are looking for adult occasion drinks, but they're looking for the health benefits. And we haven't seen this before in adult occasion drinking, because adult occasion drinking has always involved alcohol. And then, tonics and more wellness products have sat in sports supplements and wellness drinks. And now these two are coming together. Yeah, it's an exciting opportunity to work through.
So if I was to pick up that occasion piece, because when I first met you, Zoe, you were doing some work with Redemption, which is sadly no longer with us as a venue, but did a lot of work on adaptogenics in their menu. What did you see in terms of occasions then? Has that changed anymore? And what do you think the occasions are for functional drinks?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because people had only been really used to seeing them in kind of the health and wellness sector. People would have adaptogens in their smoothies, or that had extra things, whether that be mushrooms or ashwagandha or goji berries or whatever kind of superfoods or adaptogens they were having. It was very much a daytime occasion. It was in your juice or your smoothie. And that's really where we were seeing people kind of integrating them. But as the evolution of no and low and the products that were being created has kind of grown into the evening and adult occasion, it was, we were seeing more people wanting and really kind of keen on having these things in their cocktails and, not just their coffees and their juices. And so the mind shift has now gone to having these products with benefits as part of an evening occasion or part of something you integrate with food. Or like Vaughan was saying, his mindful and wellness kind of functional cocktail menu is outselling his regular cocktails. So suddenly people were thinking, okay, this isn't just like a health product that goes in my juice or my post-workout smoothie. It's actually something that I can put into my grown-up adult drink in other occasions as well.
Do you think there's a feeling that if you're not drinking, then you can come out of your evening out, not just having not drunk, but healthier?
Definitely. And I love that saying that Heidi said, it's not about the without alcohol. It's about the, what's this additional benefit? And I talk about, positive benefits. And people are looking for that. And you think I've gone to the point of going, right, I'm not drinking, or I'm limiting my drinking. I'll be more mindful of my drinking. So can I put something in addition that's either going to give me a feeling, it's going to give me a benefit into my drink? So very much, I think people are realizing that's why, you can have the best of both worlds now. You're not just drinking a drink without alcohol, you're actually drinking a drink with benefits in an adult occasion. So yeah, it's interesting how that shift has happened.
And so Heidi, where do you see that happening globally, and where do you think those occasions are where people are asking for, I guess, evening occasion functional drinks?
I think Zoe nailed it. That's very similar to where, what I would have said too, which is great. I think as we know, kind of UK and the European markets tend to be about 2 or 3 years in this category, in non-alc specifically, ahead of the US. So one thing I think that's interesting, if I were to reflect on sort of the differences between the two, I think Zoe has really captured the way that we see the European and rest of world markets that are, really starting to kind of turn the corner from, oh, this was a daytime experience, and now it's aperitivo moment. It's with food, it's sophisticated flavors. There's like a curiosity around this that really lends it to going into more of the adult social kind of early evening occasion. Interestingly enough, in the US, I think we are we're not quite at that moment yet, especially if we look at kind of liquid that's being developed and different brands coming out. And when I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, we're kind of still in this, well, where does it sit? A lot of the flavors and expressions that you see folks developing tend to be almost along like where you would see kombuchas or like more of a very sophisticated adult soda. And it's kind of still in that wellness opportunity. So I'm really looking forward to you're starting to see a little bit kind of turn the corner into something that is more sophisticated. We always say is sippable, not gulpable, right? That you're enjoying it as you would a cocktail, and it sort of matches that experience from a social occasion with food, et cetera. So, but that requires striking that drinks balance. And then how do you bring functional into that as well? So I think we're early doors with that in the US market.
It's interesting because, you know, that there's already been some education done in the, I guess, in the health and wellness space. There's already that base knowledge. So, so in some ways you're building on something that was already there, but in another space.
That's right.
Do you think that people, and we know that people pay for them, right? So do you think that there is a market where people will pay for this in the evening economy? Where is there a real commercial opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember, you know, the last 3-4 years answering this question from just a purely non-alc perspective. You know, are consumers willing to pay? Are folks going to show up at the bar? I think that question is done at this point. You know, you see $15 non-alc cocktails on-premise menus all over the US. So that's definitely there. And, you know, products that are sold, whether it's via e-com or in some of the amazing stores that we've got some attendees from, absolutely folks are willing to pay. So I think we're beyond that from the non-alc perspective, but I love when you layer on the functional wellness piece, because I think that's where we're in the, okay, is this a $3 or $4 individual single serving, you know, if you were to buy it at retail, or can we push it to like a 6, 7, 8? Now, if you're looking at something like CBD, of course, that's going to be, you know, in definitely higher product pricing points. I think we're still looking to see how that will come, but from an on-premise, I think it's a no question about it. We're already seeing that happen. And then at retail, you know, we'll start to see more and more bubbling up of the, you know, where we'll see the range of pricing start to fall. But there's certainly, you know, retailers are making space on the shelf, and consumers are coming and looking for this and, you know, searching for the best products. What do they like? How do they experiment?
It's really interesting because there is, whether we like it or not, there's a perceived value to alcohol, even though
Correct.
Alcohol is actually a free byproduct of processes. And that's why people question the price point of alcohol free a lot of the time. But once you're adding in a functional,
that's
then
right.
People's perceived value goes up hugely, because they believe that there's something in here that does something for them, and there are expensive sounding ingredients as well. So that there is a very different price point discussion with the consumer, I guess.
I wouldn't agree. Yeah, I wouldn't agree more, because you have sort of that range that I was saying, where you're getting some flavor complexity, but as soon as you can add in a functional wellness component, people's mind really shifts on what they're willing to pay for that. And I think even how retailers look at that too.
So Vaughan, when we had the pop-up shop, everything was available to sample. And then, but people would come and pick the CBD products off the shelf without even trying them. They wouldn't ask. There's again, something about perceived effect being greater than the idea around taste, although quite rightly people in the chat have talked about the fact that the products still have to taste good. Yeah. Do you find that when people are buying stuff in the bar, Vaughan? And could you talk a little bit about what you're exploring around the market opportunity in the Middle East as well? Because it would be seen that if these things are mind altering, they wouldn't be interesting to a Muslim or a non-drinking community.
I think, just in answer to your first question, I think your mind has to be open to these drinks. That's a really important point. And sometimes when I talk at traditional alcohol events like bar shows, I get a lot of naysayers who are top end kind of, maybe just below top end bartenders. Top end bartenders get it, and they're interested in it, and they do their research. But then you get a kind of slight level below that see it as a little bit of a threat to alcohol. And yet, when you look at the markets, they're so different in terms of volume. So I think that if you come into the bar and you think this is never going to work, and you've got that mindset, then it probably may not work with you. But if you're open to trying these mood boosting drinks, and we see in the bar, we see people change in terms of, they talk more rapidly, they're more animated, or they're more calmer depending on what we're giving them. We also kind of measure out what we give them. So if we're adding, ashwagandha or damiana or arctic root, whatever we're adding to the cocktails, we measure out what we give them based on the number of drinks they're going to consume. And I do think that, we're seeing it here. We're a bit of a live experiment, and social experiment here in our bar. And we just see people reacting in a really positive way to the cocktails that we serve. So, we're actually going a step further now, and we're changing our full menu to be mood boosting as of July. So we're going to be seen as this different type of bar that's not seen more as an alcohol-free bar. We're seen more as Heidi rightly said, something positive. You go in there and you can get a really interesting experience.
So can I just pick up some bits from there, Vaughan? Because it is really interesting, because there's some recent studies that have come out around people's behaviour around, that if you don't tell them they're drinking alcohol free, their stress goes and their mood elevates as well. So already, just by people knowing that they're having something mood enhancing, it will enhance their moods. That's really interesting. But I'm also really interested in your bit of theatre around the microdosing of, that's got to have a huge part of it, right? People must get so excited about that in a bar setting.
They love it. And we do a lot of special cocktails that are just off the hoop, where we just kind of don't even have like a specials board. We'll just say, okay, what do you like to drink? And we'll put something together and we'll add in the various tinctures. And they love the conversation across the bar. They love the kind of, it's very new, it's very different way of consuming drinks. And I think Zoe's point's quite interesting about, I don't think people in Dublin go out to be healthy. People are consuming these drinks during the day to be healthy, but they don't go out to be healthy. But they seem to have accepted what we offer, and the fact that it is maybe a healthier way of drinking than other ways of drinking that they might be used to. And I just think that they are absolutely fascinated by what we offer. And we've really just responded to them. We've just really responded to their liking what we're offering. It's not like our mood boosting cocktails taste radically different to our alcohol-free cocktails. They're just positioned as a mood boosting drink.
You're right about the fact that people go out as a treat, and therefore things that you wouldn't normally also see as a treat, like sugar, have a role in moderation in those occasions. And so the idea that you can add things that benefit and boost adds more to that reward which people are looking for when it's an out of home occasion. So I think it's really interesting. Just tell us a bit about the Middle East market.
Okay, I was over there a couple of weeks ago, and I went to a few of the countries out there, and went to our own bar, and our partners are very keen on us delivering a mood boosting menu to them. At the moment, we haven't, because a lot of the products that we have that are, that have adaptogens in them or nervines, they are 0.5 generally, or maybe slightly less than 0.5. And we can't use them in that market. We have to be more or less 0.05. So, and there's also different laws over there in terms of what they will accept as there are functional drinks there, and some functional foods exist there already, and there are some functional drinks that are in the market already, but they have different rule set to what we have here in Europe. So first of all, your drink's got to be under 0.05, and then you've got to check that the herbs and botanicals that you put in those drinks are legal to use in that particular country. But in terms of our partners and the bars that we are opening over there, they want this. They said, this would work really well with our consumer base. So they understand the culture. They understand the people coming through the door more than I do, because I'm not there all the time. And they said they think it's going to be, really interesting. They want to do things like connection lunches, brunches, and stuff like that. So we're really interested to see how it's going to work.
So you've brought up some really interesting questions about ingredients and that sort of stuff. And there's a question here that's come through, which is around, are consumers looking for scientifically proven functionality or the health benefit of a drink? Now, I think we all know that making science claims around health is incredibly tricky. And so, Zoe, I imagine you can't make you can make some but not all health claims. How does that impact on your labeling? And what are the things that you need to think about communicating? What are the challenges?
Yeah, and this is where I saw that question pop up, and it's a great one to look at, because this is where we have a challenge within the functional drink space. It's how we can educate consumers enough and tell them about the products without violating any, legalities, and making sure we're not making direct claims. The problem with any kind of herbs, botanicals, fungi, maybe they've been used in naturopathic medicine, maybe they've been used in health and wellness. There's lots of studies around the efficacy of these products, their benefits. There's lots of epidemiological studies. There's some in vitro studies, but there's nothing that, very few of them are on the list of kind of approved health claims. So say, for example, if you put something with a certain level of vitamin D in the UK, we can talk about immunity. If you put something with lots of vitamin B12, you can talk about cognitive health benefits and how these products aid the normal functioning of these systems. With some functional products, like the kind of ingredients that I have in Function with the mushrooms, brands like Three Spirit, there's not many of them that are kind of approved for us to say will directly help support anxiety or will directly help support, cognitive health. So we have to be careful about what we say. And I think this is where the education piece is, and onto the brands to do on their websites, on their blogs, on their social media, on places where they talk, is to talk about studies that have come out about these products, to talk about, the benefits of the products, the ingredients, rather than directly about our brands. Because we can talk about and share studies on how ashwagandha can calm anxiety, or how reishi is an anti-inflammatory and antihistamine benefit coming from the mushrooms, but I couldn't talk directly about my product. So there's, we have to be clever in the way that we do this. Again, there's different countries that you can say more about. The US, the word adaptogens is used a lot more. Brands talk directly about, immune support, whereas in the UK, we can't really do it. So I think what will be interesting, how brands evolve, and it's something that we're doing at Function, is, I'm looking at working with a university in the UK and actually creating studies around immunity and the immunity benefits within these mushrooms, and how we can have it registered so we can start to make direct claims about it. And I think, I know Three Spirit are doing research studies that's similar for their ingredients. So I think there's some work to be done by brands who are championing functional ingredients to either support further research, to look at how best they can communicate this across to their customers. And then hopefully we can work on changing legislation, putting more of these ingredients onto novel food registers. But yeah, it's something that we have to be careful around, the benefits. But what's interesting is this is the first time that adult occasion drinks, we can really talk about health, because before, whenever there's any alcohol in the mix, you can never talk about health, even if it's packed with adaptogens and stuff. If it's still got 4% alcohol, inherently it's still not the best thing for you. So we are opening up this category, but we have to tread carefully so we don't fall foul of legislation. It's also worth saying that we're developing a completely 0% product for the Middle East, which is completely non-fermented, using different type of adaptogens that we know are permitted over there. So I think brands will also look at evolving their SKUs and their ranges to maybe different territories as well, and looking at how those markets are evolving with it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in common, and then there's a lot that's different, because CBD will have its own legislative route, and so will mushrooms, and everyone will. So there's something about needing to talk together to get some shared learning, but every one of those functional ingredients has a separate path. Vaughan, on your menu, you also have to steer away from health claims that aren't possible or aren't provable. But the conversation you have with people can be very different, right? I mean, is there an opportunity there to squeeze in an extra bit of interesting stuff? Or are you very clear that your staff are trained and they come and they talk about what's legally allowed?
Yeah, I mean, we tend to work with like 5 ml per litre of water, essentially. So we would, if someone's having a couple of drinks, we would maybe give them 2 ml. But you've got to remember that these products, like these adaptogens, are very bitter. So they do, if you're putting that much in, 2 ml, you're carrying a lot of bitterness into the drink. So you have to kind of work with your menu to make sure that that is balanced. So it's not overly bitter, not overly earthy, not overly rooty. So we when we're talking across the bar, we like Zoe says, we say, these are herbs that have traditionally been used in, herbal medicine for tens of thousands of years, across Asia and China, and here in Europe as well. And a lot of them, I think, have probably been forgotten over the last 20, 30 years and only been used or consumed by people that are really in touch with themselves and what they're consuming. Now I see, much more of a movement to this becoming mainstream. And I think we're at the perfect time for this to happen. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's going to be a category that emerges between alcohol, and I put alcohol-free with that. And then I think soft drinks, and I think there's going to be a category in the middle that is wellness-based, mood-boosting drinks that are going to explode over the next 5 to 10 years.
I mean, it'll be interesting because kombucha came into the adult market a lot sooner than some of the other products, but it still has a hard job describing itself to people, even though it's a functional product. It's about gut health rather than mood enhancing, and gut health's got its own discussion going on right now. So, there are some benefits about that. I can't believe I just said that as a phrase, but anyway, so there's a lot to learn about the struggle there, right?
Yeah, but I think kombucha, it's still not a mainstream tasting product. I think it's still, dare I say it, a bit of a niche, and you'll kill me for saying that, but it's still... I
think we're beyond niche.
Well, we might argue otherwise. Niche, but it's not mainstream. It's not like, it's not like drinking a Coke, as much as nasty as that might be, or as good as people might like it, that is a mainstream flavor that sells amazingly well.
Yeah, and designed to be a mass consumed product, whereas the acidic notes from kombucha, you're right, are a bit difficult. Can I ask a question for you, Heidi? So if you're, I mean, it's really interesting because I see it quite a lot, which there's brands that come into the market and they've not quite decided where they're going yet, whether it's health food route or adult occasion route. And they're sat somewhere in the middle and they could go either way. Do you actually have to plump for one or another?
I love this question. We were literally having this discussion internally yesterday because you've got a lot of entrepreneurs and, look, entrepreneurs are in service of consumers that are starting to ask these questions and looking for interesting things. So all of us are, working together to provide amazing drinks for the consumers that are looking for them, whether they know exactly what they might be looking for or not. I think you just nailed it. And this is the number one thing that I honestly speak with folks about in this space of even if it is going to be more broad and you are going to connect across the spectrum, you have to start somewhere, because if you're going everywhere, it's a consumer doesn't know what to do with you. So this piece of really starting to anchor in, if this is an adult beverage occasion that you're looking for, and there is the sophistication with it, you're looking for the pricing opportunity, it's going to be with food, all of these different things we've spoken about, then let's be that, rather than, okay, this might be more of only a health and wellness occasion, and maybe it's more, throughout the day and it's connected to different wellness activities. I think there has to be a more clearly defined, or it just ends up being kind of blurred for the consumer. And then that sort of specialness doesn't come with the occasion. It's more of like a kombucha, to be clear, of something that folks will consume probably in all of these same spots that we're talking about, but really go about it in a different way. So I think in order to be clear on, some of the basics of your selling proposition, your messaging, how you're going to talk to the consumer, to narrow in on that and really help the consumer through that journey serves any brand really well, I think.
Yeah. Can I just, before you launch a poll, Erin, I just wanted to ask a question of that's come up on the list that I suspect Zoe might know a little bit better, but feel free to chip in, anyone, which is from a production point of view, are the most functional drinks pasteurized, or how do you maintain and stabilize for longevity? I suspect this actually applies across alcohol-free, actually, not just with functional, but...
Yeah, so obviously, we're removing a really great preservative in alcohol. So, you do have to look at different avenues of stabilizing your products. And also when you're adding in functional ingredients or botanicals, you have an extra level of complication. We sterile filter our product at the moment, which is kind of quite a traditional method for craft beer and alcohol-free beer. But as we're beginning to export and kind of looking at being in warmer countries and exporting our product farther, we are looking to pasteurize. But you do have to just make sure that the heat of pasteurization isn't going to have a negative effect on any of the functional ingredients that you're putting in your product. And as our products are getting further afield, we just have to make sure that we do get that shelf life on them, because it's all great having a product that's kind of full of botanicals, but you have to open it, keep it in the fridge, you can only use it for 2 weeks. That's not going to work for the on-trade, and it's not going to work for export. So it's about finding that balance of being able to have a product that has a good shelf life, that is happy for retailers to accept, and it's good for export, just as well making sure that the method you're using to add that shelf life isn't damaging any of the functional ingredients that you have in there.
Yeah, I think it's generally.
Laura, I can add on that too if you want. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, Zoe's spot on. I mean, I think there's a few ways that you can go about this, which, a lot of products will use potassium sorbate, sodium benzoate. That's kind of the standard. As you move into, different ways you may want to deliver that product to consumers, especially folks that are in a more, all natural or wellness interest. Sometimes those ingredients aren't flying with those customers, but that is sort of your very safe route. Then to Zoe's point, there's tunnel pasteurization, there's flash pasteurization, there's a few different things there. And I think sort of a combo effect is a good way to go, removing some of those. There is some really interesting preservation methods actually coming from plants. There's a few different new products on the market. One is actually mushroom based, and some other sources of different plants that are getting some great results. And so I think as we continue to see those, but to Zoe's point earlier, we have to get through a lot of challenge studies and testing to, see how far that can be maintained both in a closed and open environment. But I'm encouraged to just a lot of the different data that we've been seeing from, a few ingredient manufacturers and working with those, that there could be some really interesting ways that this actually, it's a sort of a different functionality, so to speak, but it's still kind of in the power of these wellness and plant ingredients. So interesting to see. But, I think that the next piece of that, which Zoe also touched on, is clear communication again with the consumer, because I think a lot of, you mentioned on the back bar, which Vaughn, of course, you're going to be dealing with all the time, when is it opened and closed, and how often can it stay there, and what's the shelf life versus in a fridge, and just being really clear with the consumer of sort of the what, when, where, how is really important as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just going to say, it's interesting you mentioned about the mushroom preservative. So we were looking at that as well. But if you're looking also, when you think about what channel you want to launch into, so in the US, we're launching into the natural product grocery channel, and companies like Whole Foods, and I think some of the
they don't want the
they won't take brands that use potassium sorbate or other kind of more artificial stabilizers. So that's also something to consider when you're looking at what channel to focus on.
Yeah, I think the Whole Foods issue is quite big, the whole of alcohol free, because Whole Foods sell alcohol, which is really unhealthy, but then they won't take alcohol free products that need some extra stuff to keep them good in the bottle. And so it seems really incongruent to me, and it's definitely a conversation to have with them at some point about that. I mean, it'd be great if people could pop into the chat whether you think there are some words that you think work well for functional in education terms or brand or communication terms with the consumer. Obviously, Vaughan, I don't think you'll be able to trademark mood enhancing, Vaughan, but if you could, that would probably be where it's at. That's what I use now whenever I speak to people. So it's a really strong and positive term. Are you going to put in a poll?
Yeah, let's do a couple questions and we'll just get some answers from the audience, a bit of fun. So, cool. So first question was, what was the first functional drink to appear on the market? Was it, and then we've got a few options there. Jolt Cola, Dr. Enough, Red.
I can't vote. I can't vote. It says panelists cannot vote. You're
supposed to know it all already.
Denied my right to vote in a poll. Gosh, dearie me.
Is Dr. Enough like a non-sessionable drink?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. I think the answers are in. So, yeah, most people think it's Red Bull, but the answer is actually Dr. Enough, which surprised me, created in 1949 in Chicago by Tri-City Beverage. It was a vitamin and caffeine-based drink marketed as the original energy booster. However, it wasn't very popular. And Lipovitan, which is an herbal-based drink from Japan, is actually widely considered the first one. Red Bull came later in 1976. Well, it's very successful.
I mean, it's interesting because Red Bull used to come in small bottles as a tiny cordial. And we had something called Gin, which is from another country, which is something similar but non-caffeinated. And it's partly where my question about where do you sit? Do you sit in the health food space or the adult beverage space? Because that drink could go into either. And it's got some of those same origins and history of format as Red Bull had. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about Red Bull, it has made that transition for both on trade and off trade, and it's done it with a serve. You know, it's done it with a vodka Red Bull, and I think that, you know, that's a really interesting dynamic where it was something that you saw in shops, and then the next minute you saw it in Ibiza, and you know, it was in the on trade, people drinking it, and therefore bars stocking it. So where I see things in Ireland like Vit-Hit's a really, you know, very popular consumer functional drink, vitamin-based drink. Comes in like 4 or 5 different flavors, and it's in every garage, every forecourt, every kind of shop that you go into here in Ireland, and it's in loads of markets globally. But it hasn't made that transition into the on-trade because it's seen as that daytime vitamin drink. So I think that Red Bull's a really interesting case of being functional, being in the off-trade, and working in the on-trade through a serve that has an effect on you.
I mean, Red Bull were very clever, I think, in their positioning early on. You know, the first incarnations of Red Bull and you know, used to, when it was marketed initially in countries like Asia, used to actually contain amphetamines, which is why it gave everyone literally wings. They obviously changed their recipe, but then they really positioned their brand as they are kind of an extreme sports brand. They're an events brand. They are a sports brand that also happen to sell drinks. So they really positioned it cleverly and kind of made that transition over.
Interesting. And there is a lot to learn from that example, that something that can cross over without any change in format either, that you can buy it in a health food shop and you can buy it in a bar, and it's exactly the same product in both. But I think some of the new flavors of Red Bull, the coconut and some of those sweeter flavors, are coming in to deal with a different audience in the Middle East. I'm not sure if I got that right, but somebody was saying that the other day. So it's beginning to break new ground still at this stage. So as the category grows, I'm really interested, because we know how No and No's been going in the UK, Heidi, and I think that No and No's beginning to hit the States. I feel it's taken a bit longer, but now it will overtake everybody. Do you think that's the case with functional? Do you think functional can actually, but functional in the UK is coming in slower, but do you think functional might be able to hit the ground running in the States a bit quicker?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Just because of the general knowledge around functional ingredients, it seems to be very different to here.
Yeah, I think that that's it. You just hit on it. I think the way in which the consumer in the US views functional is, you know, it's been sort of part of their vernacular for quite some time, with a lot of beverages that have been on the market for a while. So I think that willingness to kind of accept, trial, et cetera, is quite high. So yeah, I do think that the question is really going to be, and I think a lot about this is how of all this in the industry can help guide the retailer to help the consumer through this process. Because what's going to be tricky is you're going to have something in the cold case, something in the soft drink aisle, something in a mixer, and then you've got something in a 750 that is sitting in an alcohol set, but then a lot of grocery here natural doesn't even sell alcohol. So then you're putting something in that store where folks don't typically shop for those types of items anyway. So it's a bit of a shelf interrupter to think of, how do you go about this? Now, if you look at something more like a Total Wine, for example, which is one of our biggest spirits retailers in the US, they started let's say 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, putting a few items on the shelf. And now you go into those stores and it just keeps going, another bank. So what's interesting now is, folks, there's a lot of trial. There's a lot of non-alc spirits, non-alc beer. The wine is still remaining separate from that. But I think that's, if logically, that would be the place that you start to see some of these non-alc functional and wellness in that space. And then people are going and shopping for that as it is, because really we've got, we've done a couple different surveys. It's 83% of folks who are drinking non-alc also drink alcoholic beverages, whatever percent that might be, over the course of a year. And even in the last 90 days, some of the surveying we did, it's above 90%. So folks are really crossing over, all of their drinking styles and occasions. So I think if you look at the data of what types of retail perform better, it's going to be in a place where you typically would go shop for spirits or beverages rather than, potentially a location that doesn't sell. However, then one can also argue, well, look, especially in the US, you can avoid the 3-tier system by placing wellness and non-alc at a lot of interesting places. So it becomes kind of an interrupter and then an opportunity to educate people in a new way. So that's something I think that's really cool. It's almost combining your marketing consumer strategy with your sales strategy of, and of course, there's a lot of shops, many of which the owners are on the phone today, that have, full retail sets that are just dedicated to no and low or non or with, shall we say, with and without, our new vernacular.
Is there a quick way for you to explain the 3-tier system in the States?
Sure. So the 3-tier system basically is set up that there's each state is slightly different, but generally I'll just say that within the US, in order to distribute an alcoholic beverage, you have to go through a distributor that's licensed to sell alcohol. So it's very interesting working with entrepreneurs, for example, in the UK, who may launch a brand and can go directly into on-premise and start to work with that account, sell it, trial it. You can't do that in the States. If there is alcohol in it, you have to go through a distributor. So it just creates a lot of complexity. And for non-alc, you don't have to go through those distributors. Now, might you want to? Yes, because you're going to get to the same places where alcoholic beverages are distributed, but you could also choose to go direct or go through a food distributor or food service distributor.
There's or even Amazon for that matter, I think.
Well, exactly. And for those that don't know, you can't sell spirits or anything with alcohol via Amazon in the US. So that's a great marketplace for non-alc, functional wellness, et cetera. And anything that falls more under a wine license, you can have different ways of doing D2C and e-com there. But generally speaking, you're correct. You can't do D2C e-com with any type of spirit, but non-alc or functional, the world is our oyster from an e-com perspective. So it's a really great way to connect to consumers.
Surely it is and it isn't, Heidi, which is that, if you've got adaptogenic ingredients in that sound slightly complicated and a little bit out there and might have some suggestion of health, but you're not quite sure on the science and the legality, does that not scare a supermarket off?
So we talked a little bit about labeling earlier. So in the US, these types of drinks are going to be labeled as a supplement. So, folks are generally quite open to, the availability and range of things that are labeled as a supplement. So in the US, you would, if you're an alcohol, you're going to be go through the TTB to get label approval. If you're a food or beverage, it goes through the FDA, but anything with these types of ingredients actually falls as a supplement. There are some non-allowed ingredients, as a couple folks have referenced here, that are different in the US versus other markets. But generally speaking, I think consumers are wiser than ever around even what some of these words mean or how we connect some of that language together. But to your point, they also want to know what is the efficacy? How does this work? What is the education process on that? So I think that's a lot up to the brand.
I think the fact that there's a supplement category, it's not what we would call it here in the UK, is helpful. Correct. Zoe, do you let's say Waitrose, who must be the middle class enough to want these type of things, right? Is it a hard sell to somebody like Waitrose? They go, well, I'm just not sure.
The category, the retailers in the UK are definitely a lot more conservative, I guess, in terms of things like CBD and adaptogens, but that is changing. You know, they are increasing their aisles for health food products and wellness products. I've noticed recently Sainsbury's has got a whole new section on health and wellness, and it contains really interesting foods and drinks that maybe you're used to seeing in the health stores. You know, our first retail listing, we're with Planet Organic and Selfridges, but we've got a listing with the California supermarket chain as well. And they are really kind of receptive to functional drinks and adaptogens, and they have like a separate section for functional drinks already. So yeah, the difference between the US and the UK is really interesting. I think because we're using mushrooms, and even though, you know, they are adaptogenic mushrooms and they are a different type of mushroom to you're used to eating, mushrooms seem to be gaining a lot more popularity in terms of foraging. You know, you're seeing the range of mushrooms in supermarkets kind of expanding as well in terms of artisan mushrooms. So actually, I think, you know, how we talk about the product, craft beer brewed with superfood mushrooms, might be a bit easier for a middle-aged Waitrose customer to get their head around rather than almost CBD. So we have that flexibility with the fact that, you know, a lot of mushrooms are just edible, and, you know, that people are cooking with them and understanding them a little bit more as well. But I've noticed a difference really between the UK supermarket and retailers to the US. The US are far more, far further on in terms of how they put functional drinks into their spaces and how their customers respond to them.
I was quite taken that you can buy a can of CBD Trip in Leon on the motorway service station, because that seems like a very, you know, everyone gets worried about these things. It seems like a very brave move for something that still has some connotations around getting high. So I thought that was really interesting, when some people have reacted quite negatively sometimes that you can get an alcohol-free beer at a service station. I mean, the fact that you can buy alcohol at a service station, you know, anyway, but, you know,
I was going to say, in the US, you can certainly buy any alcohol at any service station that you want. So yeah.
People forget that sometimes. They go, oh, I can't believe I saw an alcohol-free beer at a service station. I go, well, you can actually buy beer. So anyway, Vaughan, when your customers come in and you talk to them about mood-enhancing cocktails, what are their main confusion points? What are the things that you always think you have to answer? How, you know, and you must be training your staff on some of these points.
Yeah, I think it's around kind of like not getting, I suppose, an immediate reaction to what you're drinking, and it being more gradual. So instead of it kind of going like that, you're kind of going more like that. And I just think that they don't really have that many preconceptions. You know, they just find it really interesting to come in and try something really, to them, that's new. And they may be familiar with supplements and taking them. This is a new way of enjoying them. So, and it's a very tasty way of enjoying them. It's not a kind of, you're not having to grit your teeth. That's what we really try and do in the bar, is we make cocktails that are, you know, well balanced, a lot of flavor coming through, and you know, some of the drinks that we make that have adaptogens in them aren't overly, I say mainstream flavors. You know, they're kind of slightly niche, or they kind of have a certain character to them. So you've got to look at, you know, working, you know, we're not a bar that does, you know, alternatives to Manhattans, you know, alternatives to pina coladas. You know, we're just not that type of bar. We offer a new style of drinking cocktails with a new way of getting benefits from the drinks. So I don't think that they come with like, you know, is this going to get me high, or is this going to get me, am I going to be like laughing all night? You know, they're not looking for that. What they're actually looking for is a kind of really uplifting or calming experience. And that's what they're interested in.
They don't come back and go, I'd like my money back because I'm not feeling anything.
No one's come back. In fact, they come back for more. You know, they don't come back for, and actually, you know, it's weird because some people go out going, oh, I feel a bit drunk. You know, that's their barometer for it. You know, when they go out, they go, oh, no, you know, I feel a little bit high, a little bit kind of, a little bit merry, you know, and they associate that, because we do get a lot of people that drink alcohol coming into our bar and you know, deciding to not drink when they come here. And I think that it's really interesting when people walk out and they have that kind of feel about them, and they say that as they're going out, and you hear them as they're talking to their friends as they're going out onto the street. So something's working. You know, it's certainly working with the people that come here, and we're not trying to preach anything. We're just offering what our consumers want.
And I mean, I'm still interested that you're going to move totally to a mood enhancing cocktail list, because surely for some people they might not want some of that. There might be contraindications with medication or something like that. And often we get people asking a lot for, you know, I'd like to try what an alcohol-free Negroni might taste like. Are you just like, no, that's just not us? Is that what you're saying, Vaughan?
It's not us. We don't offer.
It's so fancy.
No, we're not. we're just trying to create drinks that are interesting, that people like. And we're still going to serve beers, wines that aren't adaptogen based. And we're still going to, the thing is here is nobody comes in and brand calls. They don't go, I want a, you know, Siegfried and tonic, or I want a, you know, Kaleno and, you know, ginger beer. They don't come in and brand call because they probably don't know the brands well enough in terms of, and they're not confident enough to ask for what they want, like someone would ask for a Hendrix tonic with cucumber in a classic serve. So they're interested to try our cocktails, try different flavors. If they're mood boosting, great. You know, if they are pregnant, we will say that we can only serve certain types of drinks, and some of them, you know, will not contain any adaptogens. So it's a balance in terms of what you're offering to different customers that come through the door. But I do think that, you know, and it doesn't mean we're only using mood boosting products, just so that I'm really clear here. We want products first and foremost that give us flavor. And that's what we want in our bar. We want a back bar that gives us a range of flavors that you would get in any alcohol bar out there, but without the alcohol in it. So first we look for flavor. Then if we want to create a mood boosting product, that's up to us how we do it. We can use functional drinks, or we can use functional ingredients that we have here on the back bar. So it doesn't stop someone, you know, producing a product that they already have. They don't go running off going, oh, I've got to go and produce a functional product. You don't, you know. But I think if you want to go mainstream, you know, people out there aren't going to do that. You know, bartenders out there aren't going to necessarily be doing that. So you've got to maybe have something in your portfolio that is going to appeal and is easy for them to serve. So I just think that, you know, there's so much education to do in this, and it's great to do a seminar like this. There's so much education to do in this particular area of this category, and it is so exciting. But we're going all in. We're putting our chips in, and we're going all in mood boosting.
So in terms of labeling, are there other regulations that are very different in either Europe or the Middle East or America? Are there things that people who are making brands need to think about in terms of labeling? And is it okay that do you actually always have to reformulate like Zoe, or is it about slapping a different label on the outside? Have you looked at that at all, Heidi, in terms of Distill Ventures look at all of this market?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we're seeing between markets is just ingredients that are on a not allowed list. So even though you know, a lot of these beverages will fall under supplements, the FDA still has rules around many specific ingredients that are not allowed. So what's kind of interesting about that is if you trace some of those ingredients back through time, there's some of the original sort of medicinal ingredients. So it's a bit counterintuitive, but the fact remains that, you know, some of those are disallowed right now. I think brands will come together, and actually ingredient suppliers will start to come together to commission. Otherwise, that's going to take some time. So really, it's kind of going market to market, being clear about what ingredients work and what don't. What's tricky about that is some of these ingredients have beautiful flavor to them and complexity. So if you do have to reformulate, it really is challenging to find a direct swap for that. So there are, you know, some suppliers that are doing a really great job at that. And depending on depth of knowledge with botanicals, you can find some interesting things. And then I think otherwise, you know, as far as you do want to be able to use a sort of an amount and strength that there is some efficacy to it, but also the purity of, you know, where it's coming from. Those are the types of questions I think that an American consumer is starting to be more wise to, is tracing all the way back to the originality of where ingredients are coming from, understanding what levels are efficacious and, you know, what that looks like. So I think there is some guidance around specific ways you can label around that. You know, again, but everything will always have kind of an asterisk saying, you know, the FDA does not verify, blah, blah, blah. You see it on every supplement that there's kind of that, but that's a standard supplement advisory that you have to put on. You can do clinical studies, what we would call it here, as Zoe mentioned, to, you know, over time, be able to show that. And then what you can do is, if you are claiming a benefit, asterisk it with your clinical data study and say, this is what was found, and then link that into your website. So that's possible. It does require quite a bit more rigor and often working either through a university partner or otherwise, but brands are doing that as well. And as we talked about, this has been 15, 20 years ago. I worked on, a couple brands back in that time. Then this is similar to what, we were starting to think about then. So
I mean, there's a really interesting question from Anne about the fact that normally adaptogens, it's about the regularity of taking them and having a course of them that creates the impact. Mm-hmm. Do you think American consumers expect that, and so they will drink these products regularly, or do you think they want to be able to see more information?
I think it's Americans will mix it across their whole diet. So it's being able to kind of have this additive layered effect. So maybe I have a supplement, maybe I'm knowledgeable about the foods that I eat, and then I want to add a drink into my repertoire to just have a fully fleshed out kind of diet and social regime that I know is meeting some of these, further functional benefits. So I don't know that someone necessarily is going to take the drink like a medicinal type of thing. I see it more as that it's kind of an added benefit to a lifestyle change.
I think that's right. I mean, if you don't regularly take, a product that needs a course of treatment, then what you're doing is you're picking a drink that isn't going to do any harm, that sounds like it's got some benefit, even though you might not get that whole benefit from drinking it.
That's right.
As a set amount. Is that right, Zoe? Do you think that too, or?
Yeah, and I think that consumers are starting to look at a more holistic approach at all the foods and drinks that they consume, rather than, you eat X amount, you're eating sugar, you're eating these products, and then when you want to get healthy, you take a handful of vitamins. I think this is what we've been doing, and it's kind of feeling a little bit jarring with customers now. So I think Heidi's right. Consumers are going, I have my mushroom coffee in the morning, and then I eat XYZ during the day, and my go-to alcohol-free beer has adaptogens in it. So you're just really building them into your diet. And I think customers are understanding that there's some products that are mood enhancing and have an effect like quite immediately. You can feel them. And then there are others that work adaptogenically. So, you are having a buildup of these products in your diet over time is having the health benefit. It's not like you're going to drink a drink and then suddenly, your immunity's fixed or your gut health is better. I think consumers are getting more educated on the fact that it is about an accumulative effect. So within my diet, within things that I imbibe and things that I eat, I'm going to make sure that I'm getting adaptogens and superfoods into my diet. So overall, my look and my holistic approach to my health is kind of as a whole, rather than just eat rubbish, take loads of supplements. So yeah, it is changing.
And do you think there's some functionalities that are more popular with consumers? Do you see what's your most popular mood enhancing cocktail, Vaughan?
I think Good Spirits is one of our most popular ones, and that's
what's it got in it? What's it do? What's it do? What's it do?
It energizes you. It has 3 spirit livener in it. It has distillers in it. So you've got a combination. We try and use combinations of different brands. So the interesting thing is that brands will tend to do serves that use their products, where we mix and match and just use what we want, and it allows us to create lots of different flavors and really just give people I think an uplifting or a calming experience. I mean, I don't know, when I serve 2 American Dreams, for example, which is 3 Spirit Nightcap, Lies American Malt, and like ginger ale, that is a pretty simple serve. But when I serve, customers 2 or 3 of those, they start to yawn, right? And I don't know. And after they've had, when I say give them the second one, I say you'll start yawning now. Now they do start yawning. So is that because the nightcap, or is that because they're tired, or is it because it's?
Because you're a mind reader.
But they do, and you just see them doing it in the bar. They just kind of relax, and they just kind of like, now maybe like Anne's right, you've probably got to take lots of this stuff, but if we put additional bit of valerian in it, and it helps them relax and take it easy. Add chamomile in our drinks. These are drinks that have or ingredients that traditionally been used for, as I said, tens of thousands of years. We're just bringing it in a new style of drinking.
I know. I mean, I say to some people, basically 3 Spirits Nightcap is like the old-fashioned sleeping draft, but made nicer. It's, you know, that's what it is. It's something new. How did you see something that's going to be the hero in this space?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, thanks for asking. We so at DV we have actually a non-alc spotlight that's going to be coming out in the subsequent weeks, and we did some surveying around just this topic actually with Ritual, who probably many of you on the phone know. Just, you know, a poll across a broad consumer base to see, okay, are folks open to functional? It was a resounding above 90% yes. And then we said, okay, if so, then what? And it very closely matches what Vaughn said. I think the top 4 were, it just alternates between energy, stress, boosting, calming. So it's kind of this, if you put the 2 together, it's really around boosting energy, stimulating the brain. Those were the first. And it was things like ginseng and caffeine were some of the, you know, more recognized. And then on the sort of stress and calming side, looking at different types of adaptogens, L-theanine. So those are some that folks were a little bit more comfortable with. So it matches quite closely to what Vaughn said.
Well, I guess it's where 3 Spirits have gone with the Livener, the Social Elixir, and then the Nightcap. It's not about what's more popular. It's about what you use at which point.
That's it.
Your evening.
Right. Boosting, energizing, or sharpening, or calming. I think you kind of have that series of how your evening would progress. Exactly.
Awesome.
And connecting.
Connecting.
Yeah. And so
all of these drinks are social cohesion in a glass.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Even ones without aptogens in.
Bringing consumers together. Yeah, bringing guests together. Exactly.
Erin, do you want to do your poll?
Yeah, let's launch another one and we can get some engagement. All right. Great. So what percentage of consumers seek functional benefits from their food and drink? Again, this is globally, but it's ties into exactly what you guys are saying.
I now know why we're not allowed to take part. I see that the answers are on our sheet.
Yeah.
And I even got the last one wrong, and I had the answer in front of me. So I'm feeling really clever right now.
Great. Right. So the answer to that one was D, 65%. And that was according to a white paper from Kerry Group, which said, 65% of consumers seek functional benefits from their food and drink.
I think that's really interesting, because I could say that something that increases my energy is a mood enhancing product. So mood enhancing out of all of those 4 is probably the most, subjective one, I guess, isn't it? So and the most vague in terms of description. So people may answer that in a very specific way, I think. Because, if I want to G up and have a bit of a good time, I'll go for a very secret Red Bull. I've had to watch my consumption since giving up drinking, but it's my little treat. And, but I see that as energy and enhancing mood. So anyway, it's interesting how people might answer those. There was a question from Zita that I just wanted to pull in on, which is, those products that seek to replicate the buzz of alcohol. So Zoe's Function doesn't do that. You don't your health. Whereas I guess 3 Spirits and Sentia are those that are replicating the buzz of alcohol. They're a very different proposition, because if you're promising the buzz of alcohol, I suspect people are expecting more of an effect. And also, do you think that will become more popular going forward, that idea that this is something that's replicating something about alcohol? What do you think, Heidi?
I've been surprised when we've done either surveying on our own or jointly with our brands in the portfolio, that the number of non-alc users that use other things that do have quite an effect. So I think that you're spot on. It'll be interesting to just see exactly what folks are looking for. I think there is an element where that covers everything we've been talking about, more from a health and wellness functional perspective, but there is definitely another thread that I see that touches more on what you're saying of having a more spot on effect of kind of this, imbibing type of feel. So.
And just to add to that, I think that, take alcohol out of the equation and put in other things that people are consuming, and consuming those with alcohol free. They're really getting an interesting experience. And I think that that's something that is emerging. and is, in countries where it's legal, it's becoming a much more popular way of going out and enjoying themselves without some of the messiness, I would say.
Yeah, that's right.
It's definitely a reason why alcohol is so popular. It has a lot of downsides and a lot of negative effects for the individual and from a society perspective, but a lot of the positive feelings people love. They feel relaxed, they feel a little bit freer, they feel a little bit giddy. People, us animals, we enjoy those feelings. But I think it's interesting, like the work that Sentia and Professor David Nutt are doing at looking at what is it in our brains that trigger these, the GABA receptors that are highlighting the good sensations in our brain when we drink alcohol. If we can replicate that using herbs and botanicals that give us this positive, this buzz, this high, but in a natural way, I think humans will gravitate towards that because it is fun. And it is, people do like to have an elevated level of consciousness and an elevated level of mood. We just need to work out how we can do it naturally that doesn't involve a serious toxin.
I think it's really interesting because when alcohol-free first came on the market, and people didn't quite understand it, I'd say, well, people are changing their drinking, but they don't want to stop drinking fluids.
Yeah.
They don't want to stop going out. All of these things are the same. And actually, when it comes to this category, people still want to feel something. Yeah. And they are all very natural feelings. And and in all of the alcohol-free, whether it's functional or not, we're creating the ability for people to feel social, feel rewarded, and then maybe also feel a little bit of a buzz as well. And that's all feeding into a whole load of social and behavioural things that we want.
We're creatures of ceremony, whether it's getting high through music and drumming around a campfire thousands of years ago. This is what we crave as humans. We crave this ceremony, we crave this ritual, we crave this interaction with other humans. In the West, that's just been very cleverly meshed into always having to evolve alcohol or other narcotic substances, but it doesn't have to be. I think what we love, and maybe why people come out of Vaughan's Bar, yes, they've had some products that will certainly elevate their mood, but it's almost a placebo of I'm laughing, I'm joking, I'm having fun, I'm with my friends, I'm in a great social environment. That gives you a natural high. We just aren't used to tapping into that because we've always had alcohol kind of in the background swirling around and us then attributing that to the alcohol, when actually there's a lot of positive stimulation and natural endorphins that come from going out and having fun with your friends.
Yeah, and it's the bit that I'm very clear about, which is that you're trying to meet some human expectations and some human behaviors. And so when people say to me, well, what's the point of an alcohol-free drink? I said, well, actually, there's huge value in that glass. Being socially included has huge value. Feeling like this is a reward is huge value. Feeling like this stimulates and enhances your evening has huge value. Just because it's not alcohol, for which we probably put more value on than it deserves, it doesn't mean that it won't continue to have a lot more value, and that's what's in that glass and in that bottle. It's the ABV should not be the only carrier of value in this world, right?
Yeah, right. And I also think we're evolving our bars as well. We're evolving the way that we engage with our consumers. If we're going to offer mood boosting, we need the environment around it to enhance that anyway. So we're looking at a bar that's like a high terrace bar overlooking the sea, in the Middle East, that's going to have an outdoor terrace where people can enjoy drinks. There's going to be a DJ. It's going to be very much a kind of uplifting experience anyway. So I think, and then we're looking to hopefully partner on some festivals this year, which are completely alcohol free. And I do think it's a really interesting emerging and a type of experience that goes beyond maybe what we can program to say is acceptable. And I think that's where this whole category is really interesting.
Experience is a very key word. We talk about occasion, but experience is probably trumps it slightly. I was thinking of taking some of these drinks to the new Dream Machine thing where it shows the flickering lights, see if it changed what I see behind my eyes. I'll do that for everyone as a social experiment.
And film it.
You can't. It's just amazing, honestly. You have to do it. Government funded hallucinogenic experience in London and the UK at the moment. It's amazing. Okay, so let me just come to a last question. So Heidi, where's functional going? What do you see is the next 12 months and beyond for functional?
I think it's a great provocation. I mean, I think if I I almost like to step forward and say, you know, if we're a year from now and we got to have this panel again, what would be really cool for us to see? I think that I'm really excited just to see a lot of founders come to the surface that are, you know, creating really amazing drinks. You know, Vaughn has created these amazing menus, but there's a great staff of people behind this that have to serve and educate. And how do we start to bring all of that work into a place where the consumer, of course, we're going to have a high hurdle of education, but that we can have something that clicks a little bit more quickly and delivers an amazing experience and the right occasion. So, you know, a year from now, if we're seeing that, you know, the sort of, whether it's, you know, positioning or the segmentation, that just non-alc starts to expand even more, you know, it's going into all different occasions and ways of drinking, styles of drinking, but if functional really becomes almost like its own category within that, I think that will be really exciting because it's what consumers are looking for. You know, they're clearly non-alc is here to stay. There's a lot of really amazing things happening with it. I think we've crushed that. And I know, Laura, when we met a couple of years ago, you know, it was, well, where are we going with this? And now it's, you know, it's clearly here to stay. So where do we start to see new occasions, new beverages, you know, new wellness functionality bubble up there? I think, you know, consumers are, look, we've said, look, if we can deliver a drink that's delicious, sophisticated, meets a social occasion, and has added benefits to it, consumers are really looking for that. So,
Vaughan, where do you think it's going?
I think it's just going to escalate, and there's no going back. You know, we see it as being part of our DNA now. We want to make sure that our environments reflect that DNA of that mood boosting, those mood boosting properties. I think it's a much more attractive proposition than an alcohol-free bar, which a lot of people have preconceptions about, you know. So I think by being mood boosting, by being well-being, you know, serving the types of products that Zoe makes, serving the types of products that Dash and the guys out there make, you know, and Anne, I think it's going to be really, really interesting, the new products that are coming out and how they become part of our menu. And thanks to everyone that's doing it, because we wouldn't have gone down this route if you hadn't given us the products to offer to our consumers, and they're loving it here. And I can't wait to see how it goes in the Middle East. So in a year's time, you know, are our consumers over there going to be, you know, latched onto this and no going back?
Zoe says she hopes so, because she's making the beer for it. So where do you see it going, Zoe?
I agreeing with both of these comments, and I think that the exciting thing is we're going to see so much more innovation in this space, and so many more different herbs and botanicals and fungi that are going to start to be used. And from a health perspective, which is, you know, why I started Function, it's helping people to empower their health through the foods and drinks that they consume. And I think it's just a really exciting opportunity where we're seeing consumers really looking at health and wellness as a driver for across the range of the products that they consume. And I think this is going to lead into some really exciting products coming to market. And if we all get together in a year's time, which might be really interesting to do, kind of 12 months on, I think we'll see a lot more products maybe getting put onto the novel foods register, so allowed to be able to be used. We're going to see a lot more kind of consumer knowledge and education around adaptogens and fungi and botanicals. And I think it's really going to be part of an integral part of the consumer shopping choice, is what the products are doing for me and how they can be supporting my overall health. So it's a really exciting time from a societal change in our outlook to occasional drinking, as well as innovation in products.
Cool. And Zoe, where can people find you at Function at the minute?
So Function is available in about 150 stockists around the country. We're in Selfridges and Planet Organic, and our focus for the end of this year is very much the US. So we'll be launching with Erewhon, which is a supermarket chain in California, and we've got nationwide distributors set to go in California as well. So hopefully anyone who's listening in the US, over the next kind of 6 months, you're going to see Function popping up in lots of different places.
And Vaughan, when does your full mood enhancing? Are you going to change your signage outside and put like mood enhancing bar?
I'm gonna move it away from alcohol-free bar. Yeah. I think that, you know, what I suppose doing the work in, we wanted to change it here first because it's the original bar, and you know, we're putting our new menu out this month, and then we want to follow that up in the Middle East. But you know, the idea of opening bars in the Middle East is interesting because it's going to allow us to open more bars across Europe and the US, which is really what we want to do. So we're looking at Amsterdam, we're looking at London. I'd love to open in LA. You know, I just see that there's so many different ways of offering consumers really great education, really great products, really great experience that goes beyond alcohol. And we are a bar at the end of the day. Whether we'll be a bar in the future is another question.
Cool. And Heidi, where's the still looking? Basically, how do people on this call get your attention?
Yes. Well, that was, I mean, definitely the comment that I previously made was meant to spark some creative energy out in the universe. And, you know, we love talking to entrepreneurs in this space. And I think, you know, what I really love is just the dialogue that we're having wherever folks are on their journey. If they're in formulation, ideating, still in, you know, innovation stage, we have a lot that we can just converse about and offer. We're, you know, I think non-alc is a, you know, we actually, when I joined DV about 4.5 years ago, this was what I came on to begin with, was building the non-alc portfolio in the US. And now my role is expanded so that I, you know, work across all of our categories in the US, but we're still really committed to the space. You know, the consumer wants a wide variety of drinks. And I think this makes a lot of sense. So I saw that Anne mentioned I had a bit of a tall order in there. So let's do it. Let's see it. Let's see how we can get all of these things to come together. We're really excited.
Cool. And I think we've also answered everyone's questions. So this recording will also be available afterwards. So you can go back through it, and then I'm sure you know how to get hold of everybody if you had more questions. Shall I hand back to you, Erin?
Yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, like Laura said, we'll be following up today's discussion with an email to all of you who joined and contain kind of any resources mentioned, as well as links to the panelists' different brands and companies, organizations. And yes, that'll also include a link to the webinar recording in case you would like to share with any colleagues or friends in the industry who missed it, or rewatch for yourself to pull out those insights. We'll also be sending around an insight report that we've conducted on the topic at WonderNETwork. So that's even more of a deep dive into this category as a whole. And that'll be coming out next Monday, should be. So happy to share that round as well. And then, yeah, lastly, I just want to say a big thank you to all the panelists. It's been really great of you guys to give up your afternoons and Heidi, your morning to join us. It's been a really good discussion. And of course, Laura, thank you for co-hosting. You've been a fantastic co-host. And yeah, and thank you as well to the audience for a great discussion. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully at the next webinar. So.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Bye.